Welcome to the session on Windows Networking Troubleshooting, TCP, IP networking. In this presentation, we'll explore how computers communicate over networks using the TCP, IP protocol suite. We'll walk through the 7 layers of the OSI reference model, understand how IPv4 and IPv6 addressing works, learn about DHCP and DNS services, and finish with the key command line tools you can use to diagnose and fix network problems. Whether you're managing a small home network or a large enterprise environment, the concepts in this session are the foundation of everything that makes modern networking possible. Networks exist for one fundamental reason: to let people do their work and communicate with each other. At the home level, a simple router connects multiple users to the internet and to each other, enabling file sharing, media streaming, and shared printers across the household. In enterprise environments, the same concept scales dramatically. Large companies deploy Active Directory servers, print and mail servers, wired switches, and wireless access points, all working together to securely connect employees, no matter where they are on the corporate network. The ultimate goal of any network, regardless of size, is cross-platform communication. A Windows laptop, an Apple desktop, a Linux server, and a wireless tablet all need to exchange data seamlessly. The challenge, and the art, of networking is making that happen reliably for every device, every user, every time. To understand how all of these different devices communicate, we turn to the Open Systems Interconnection Model, the OSI model. The OSI model is a standardized framework that computer manufacturers around the world have agreed to implement. It separates network communication into 7 distinct layers, stacked one on top of the other, each with a specific role. Starting from the bottom, Layer 1, the physical layer, handles the actual hardware, cables, signals, and network cards. Layer 2, the data link layer, deals with MAC addresses and frames for local communication. Layer 3, the network layer, handles IP addressing and routing across networks. Layer 4, the transport layer, manages TCP and UDP, controlling reliability and ports. Above those are the upper 3 layers. Layer 5, the session layer, manages communication sessions. Layer 6, the presentation layer, handles data formatting and encryption. And Layer 7, the application layer, is what end users interact with: web browsers, email clients, and so on. Together, these 7 layers form the TCP IP stack, the universal language of computer networking. Let's start at the very bottom of the OSI model. Layer 1, the physical layer. The physical layer is the only hardware layer in the OSI model. Every other layer exists purely as software. This layer defines the protocols and specifications that govern how raw bits of data travel across physical media, whether that's an Ethernet cable, a fiber optic line, a Wi-Fi radio signal, or even a USB connection. Think about the enormous variety of hardware that forms a network. Network interface cards from hundreds of different manufacturers, Ethernet cables, telephone jacks, switches, hubs, wireless extenders, workstations, tablets, and servers. Despite this diversity, the physical layer ensures they all speak the same language at the most fundamental level: the movement of electrical or optical signals. Critically, the physical layer transmits logical communication requests to and from the data link layer above it. It's the bridge between the world of software protocols and the physical world of electrons and light. Moving up to Layer 2, we have the data link layer. The first key concept here is packet switching. Rather than sending a large message as one continuous stream, Windows networks break data into small, manageable packets. A single email might be split into thousands of individual packets, each traveling independently, possibly by different routes, before being reassembled at the destination. The data link layer is responsible for this reassembly process. It also handles the process of data encapsulation, where each packet is wrapped in a frame. That frame contains a header and a footer. The header includes the source and destination MAC addresses, the hardware-level identifiers unique to each network adapter, along with protocol information. The footer includes error-checking data to detect any corruption during transit. Several important protocols operate at this layer, including the Address Resolution Protocol, or ARP, Ethernet, the most common wired LAN protocol, IEEE 802.11, which is the standard behind Wi-Fi and Token Ring. Layer 3 is the network layer, and this is where TCP, IP really takes center stage. While the data link layer uses Ethernet to move packets within a single local network, the network layer uses Internet Protocol, IP, to move data across different, dissimilar networks. This is why IP is called an end-to-end protocol. It carries data from one end of the network spectrum all the way to the other. The network layer's primary responsibilities include IP addressing, routing, and subnet masking. Every computer on a network must have a correctly configured TCP/IP stack with a unique IP address so that packets can be properly directed. As data passes through this layer, an IP header is added to each packet. This header contains the source IP address, the destination IP address, protocol information, and a time-to-live value. The data is then passed upward to the transport layer. For this to work, every computer's network adapter must have IPv4 and IPv6 protocols properly installed and configured. Layer 4 is the transport layer, and it introduces an important decision. How reliable does the connection need to be? The transport layer supports two types of connections. The first is connection-oriented, implemented by the Transmission Control Protocol, TCP. In a TCP connection, both the sender and receiver agree that perfect, error-free delivery is essential. Every packet must arrive intact. If any are lost, they are retransmitted. This overhead is worth it for things like software downloads, financial transactions, or medical data. The second type is connectionless, implemented by User Datagram Protocol, UDP. With UDP, some data loss along the way is acceptable. Think about streaming video or online gaming. A few dropped frames or packets don't ruin the experience, and a lower overhead means faster, more efficient delivery. In addition to connection type, the transport layer adds port information to each packet. Ports tell the receiving computer which application should handle the incoming data. Port 80 for HTTP, port 443 for HTTPS, port 25 for SMTP, and so on. When you combine an IP address with a port number, you get a socket. For example, 192.168.4.2:80 means send this HTTP data to that specific computer. The top three layers of the OSI model, session, presentation, and application, are all about what happens after data has crossed the network and arrived at its destination. The session layer, layer 5, establishes, manages, and terminates communication sessions between two computers. It ensures that a conversation stays open for as long as it needs to be. The presentation layer, layer 6, acts as a translator. It ensures that data from the sending application is in a format the receiving system can understand. This includes encoding, encryption like SSL and TLS, and compression. The application layer, layer 7, is the closest to the end user. This is where user-facing applications like Microsoft Edge, Firefox, Outlook, and FTP clients access network services. Importantly, applications themselves don't know anything about the underlying network protocols or whether they're on a local LAN or the global internet. They simply receive the data and present it to the user. At the receiving end, data is unencapsulated. The networking stack works through the layers in reverse, stripping away each wrapper until the original data payload is delivered to the right application. Now let's talk about the two versions of Internet Protocol that operate at the network layer, IPv4 and IPv6. IPv4 was the original Internet addressing system. Each address is 32 bits long, organized into 4 groups of 8 bits, called octets, separated by dots. In binary, an address might look like a long string of ones and zeros. Converted to the familiar decimal format, it becomes something like 47.184.173.208. This system provides approximately 4.3 billion unique addresses, which seemed more than enough in the early days of the Internet. But with the explosion of connected devices worldwide, the IPv4 address pool has been exhausted. This is where the dual stack comes in. A dual stack is a TCP/IP implementation capable of processing both IPv4 and IPv6 packets simultaneously. It uses IPv6 when it can and falls back to IPv4 when required, making the transition between the two protocols gradual and backward compatible. All modern Windows computers support the dual stack by default. Because IPv4 addresses ran out, the Internet engineering community developed IPv6, a dramatically larger addressing system. IPv6 addresses are 128 bits long, written in hexadecimal as 8 groups of 4 characters, separated by colons. An example looks like this: 2001:0 db8:85A3, and so on. Each position can hold a value from 0 to 9 and A through F, which means there are approximately 3.4 times 10 to the 38th power available addresses. That is 340 undecillion addresses, a number so large that, in theory, we should never run out. But the transition from IPv4 to IPv6 isn't overnight. 3 main strategies are being used around the world. Native IPv6 networks rely solely on IPv6. This is the future goal, but is not yet widespread. Dual-stack networks use both protocols at the same time, preferring IPv6 when available. And tunneling techniques like 6-to-4, 6RD, ISOTAP, and Teredo encapsulate IPv6 traffic inside IPv4 packets when crossing legacy networks. All 3 approaches allow the world to move toward IPv6 while maintaining full backward compatibility with existing IPv4 infrastructure. Every device on a network needs a unique IP address, and DHCP is the service that hands those out automatically. DHCP, which stands for Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol, allows nodes on a network to obtain their IP addresses from a central server without any manual configuration. In enterprise environments, a DHCP server maintains a pool of available addresses, assigning them to clients as they connect and reclaiming them when they disconnect. On Windows 10, DHCP is enabled by default. To verify or enable it, you open the Network and Sharing Center, navigate to your adapter's properties, select Internet Protocol version 4, and choose Obtain an IP address automatically. The same process applies for IPv6. The benefits of DHCP are significant. It eliminates typographical errors in manual IP configuration. It prevents address conflicts. It provides a centralized, automated system that virtually never needs attention once set up. It handles mobile devices gracefully and gives network administrators complete control over the available address range. DHCP relay agents also mean you don't need a separate DHCP server on every subnet. When DHCP isn't appropriate, for example, for a printer or a server that needs a predictable, permanent address, administrators can assign static IP addresses manually instead. IP addresses like 192.168.15.25 or the even longer IPv6 equivalents are accurate, but completely impractical for everyday use. That's why DNS exists. The domain name system is a name resolution service that translates human-readable domain names, like www.example.com, into the IP addresses computers need to communicate. Every time you type a web address into a browser, DNS is working behind the scenes. Here's how the process works. First, your browser sends a query to find the IP address for the domain you typed. That query reaches a recursive server, which decides where to forward it next. The recursive server passes the request to a root server, which examines the top-level domain, .com, .org, .edu, and directs the query to the appropriate top-level domain server. That server then looks at the middle part of the domain name and forwards the request to the authoritative name server for that specific domain. The authoritative server looks up the host name, often www, and returns the final IP address. Your browser then uses that address to connect, and the website loads. Common DNS servers include Google's public servers at 8.8.8.8 for IPv4 and 2001:4860:4860. 8888 for IPv6. You can configure custom DNS servers manually in your network adapters properties. When something goes wrong on a network, command line tools are your first line of defense. The first is ping. It sends ICMP echo requests to a target and reports whether they received a response. Pinging the loopback address 127.0.0.1 tests whether your own computer's TCP IP stack is configured correctly. Pinging your default gateway tests LAN connectivity. Pinging an external address tests internet connectivity. If a ping times out, common causes include a powered-off remote computer, a misconfigured firewall, router problems, or hardware errors. The second tool is IP protocol configuration. Running IP protocol configuration /all displays comprehensive information about your network adapters, including your IPv4 and IPv6 addresses, your MAC address, whether DHCP is active and when the lease expires, your DNS server addresses, and more. This is often the first command you run when troubleshooting an unknown configuration. The third tool is tracert. It traces the path packets take from your computer to a destination, hop by hop. It modifies the time to live values of ICMP packets, so each router along the route responds in turn, revealing exactly where packets slow down or fail. And the fourth is netch. This is both a diagnostic and configuration tool. The command netch int IP reset resetlog.txt repairs the TCP IP stack on a local computer, fixing misaligned protocol layers. It can also be used interactively to configure DHCP, routing, wins, and more. Let's bring it all together. Networks exist to connect users and devices so they can share resources and do their work, whether in a home setting or a global enterprise. The OSI model provides the universal framework that makes all of this possible. Its 7 layers define exactly how data is prepared, transmitted, routed, delivered, and presented, creating a common language that every manufacturer and administrator follows. IPv4 and IPv6 are the addressing systems that identify every device on every network. The dual stack, tunneling, and native IPv6 strategies are managing the ongoing transition from the exhausted IPv4 address space to the nearly limitless IPv6 system. DHCP automates the distribution of IP addresses, eliminating errors and reducing administrative overhead. DNS translates human-friendly domain names into the numerical IP addresses computers actually use, making the web navigable for everyone. And when problems arise, as they inevitably do, ping, IP protocol configuration, tracert, and netch give network administrators and support professionals powerful tools to quickly diagnose and resolve connectivity issues. This session is the foundation. Master these concepts, and you'll be equipped to understand, configure, and troubleshoot virtually any Windows network environment.